This is TWiT.
This is the first public release, and so it could get better over time. But if you go back to last June, when Microsoft was talking about Android apps on Windows 11, one of the things they were saying was that you could go to the Windows Store, you could browse for apps. You wouldn't care if those apps were web apps, Windows apps, store apps, Android apps, whatever. You would just install them from the store, and they would run, and these things would all run side by side. And that is not how this works at all. So in order to get an Android app on Windows 11, you have to first install the Amazon App Store for Android, which is a Windows 11 app, which actually that's not even true. It's an app. It's a standalone app. As it turns out, that thing is actually an Android app. So as part of that install, you have to meet all these prerequisites. You have to have Hyper-V or the virtualization components installed. You have to have virtualization capabilities enabled in your firmware if you have an Intel or AMD-based PC, or actually also a Qualcomm-based PC, I guess. There's a bunch of stuff you have to kind of do to make this work. And it's not a seamless experience. So this App Store is a standalone app. I would say 75 to 90% of the apps are just garbage game. They're stupid. It's horrible. Like the quality is terrible. There's only 3 to 7 maybe actual apps. And the only one to me that's any decent is the Kindle app, right? This is kind of the canonical, tablet app or whatever. I think there's a couple of airline apps. There's a flight tracker app. There's a couple of things, but most from an app perspective, there's just not a lot there yet, and that will change over time. That's fine. It's a lot of work, a lot of steps to get this thing going, and the way this works. And this is something you don't see with the Windows subsystem for Linux, for example. You have to manually start up an Android VM, a virtual machine, before any of this stuff works. Now, I shouldn't say manually. The act of running one of these apps will cause it to start. So if you run the App Store for Android, that will cause it to start. If you run one of the apps, that will cause it to start. It doesn't take a minute or anything for it to load, but it does take several seconds, and you see it, like you see the thing starting up. It's a very developer-like experience to me, and it's not at all seamless like Microsoft promised. Now, this could change over time, we'll see. But the dream here, the idea is you go to the Microsoft Store in Windows 11 or I guess it'll just be Windows 11, and you search for an app, and you're like, I want the Kindle app, or I want I think it's some app, Crazy Bird, or whatever it is, some app. And if that thing is available on Android through the Amazon store, it will appear in the listing. You'll click on it, you'll install it, you'll run it. It will just run next to other apps. It looks like an app. It's fine. And today, that is not quite the case. And of course, the other thing that's going on here is the Amazon App Store for Android. I mean, like, unless you're a Kindle, like Fire HD tablet user, you're not using this App Store, right? You're using the Google Play Store. And that is not available. Although people have already figured out how to sideload that. So maybe that's something. I'm away, right? So I can't look at that right now. But when I get home, that's one of the things I'm going to look at, because honestly, what most people want is Gmail, Google Calendar, the Google apps especially, but also just the broader catalog of apps that are available in the Google Play Store. Now, the problem is Microsoft ostensibly is working with Amazon and with these third-party app developers to make sure that these apps, work well in Windows in some way. And this is something that maybe Google has done some of this work with Chromebooks, right? They want the apps to kind of work with the mouse and keyboard. They want the apps to scale correctly if you full size them, that kind of thing. So I think there's been some work there with Amazon, and I'm sure, these things are better citizens on Windows as a result. But the experience right now, as it should be, it's pre-release, it's okay, is not particularly great. There's also a kind of it's not really that goofy, but there's an app, this kind of a files type app where you can browse the file system of this virtual machine, which is your Android install, which lets you copy files back and forth. I can't think of a huge reason that you might want to do this exactly quite yet, but it is, it's like when you attach an Android phone to your computer with a cable and you can browse the file system and download photos or whatever. That capability exists. It's there, and that's fine. But man, I think the most stunning problem that I've seen is just the quality of the apps. You would think, here's version 1. we only have 50 apps, right? These will be the 50 best apps. They have to be, right? They're not. They are the biggest collection of garbage I have ever seen outside of the Microsoft store, right? Which is insane. They're terrible looking at. Well, they're mostly games, actually, is what they are. Yeah. It's really strange.
Did you see today that I saw this, Tom Warren wrote this up. There was an Italian design student who's managed to get the Google Play Store running on Windows 11.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So
in a very convoluted way, using Windows subsystem for Linux.
So the problem with that, actually,
like, will there be a day when this is officially supported? I don't know. Lately, with Microsoft and Google warring, I doubt it.
Right. That requires Google to say okay, right? So
right.
The third-party utility thing that makes this work could be cut off very easily by Microsoft and or Google.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I mean, Google has now, I don't know how far we're in, 2-3 years more of helping developers tailor Android apps to work well in Chromebooks, which, you know, it's the same thing. They have the bigger screens and they can scale the apps correctly, all that kind of stuff. If you could get it to work, if it does work, if no one blocks it, there's no reason Windows users couldn't benefit from the work that Google has done to make those apps work better on bigger screens, right? So that literally is the dream. Yeah, we'll see. I'll look at that when I get home. But yeah, I read through it and I was like, yeah, this is.
Yeah.
Even
There's
the
a whole
official
YouTube video. Yeah, but I'm like, it's not for everyone.
Right. No. Anyway, that's where we're at. So I think as of today, I suspect. Well, I'm not going to look, but I suspect if you went to the Windows Store today and you browsed for App Store for Android, in addition to all the garbage apps that the Microsoft Store would show you, hopefully you could get the Amazon thing, and then you could start downloading apps. But the important thing, remember, I think it was September, there was an update for Windows 11 Store, and we had known since June that Android apps were coming, and they were coming via the Amazon App Store for Android. Yeah. They announced the Epic Game Store was coming, and they announced that the Amazon Retail Store was coming. And in both of those cases, those apps were going to be standalone apps. You downloaded them, you would run them separately from the Microsoft Store, and then you would do whatever you did with them from there. So if you would order stuff from Amazon, obviously, or you would download games or play or buy games from Epic, and then you could install them on your computer. But they weren't store-in-a-store experiences. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, the Amazon App Store is supposed to be a store-in-a-store experience, but as of today, it isn't. It's exactly what those other things are. It's a standalone app. You download it. You manage all the Android apps separately from there. And honestly, I think for this to make sense for normal consumers, it kind of has to be a store in a store. It has to be, right? Like that's the thing that makes it make sense.
Right.
To me.
Well, now we know why they didn't manage to ship Android apps in time for Windows 11.
It's not even close.
Yeah. It's not ready.
Nope.